Welcome to another Wednesday live Q&A, a group session where you can step into the Zoom room and ask me any question that is troubling you. And we will go through the Alkistis Method, the simple 3-step process, which is based on the method of Socrates and Aristotle. And in this way, we'll be able to process your questions. We will pass it through the 3 filters of ethos, pathos, and logos, and you will see very quickly a new situation beginning to arise, a new way of looking at the issue. Because as you know, many of our problems are a question of how we are looking at something. Epictetus, the great Stoic philosopher, said that it is not events that bother and trouble human beings, but their perception of those events that really cause the upset, the anger, the anxiety. So very often it's a question of rethinking and looking at something from a completely new perspective. Again, as Socrates taught, that in everything bad there is a seed of good. In everything good there's a seed of potential danger or something bad in it. In Greek that's uden kako amiges kalou. Wherever you are, I want you to just sit back a little with your arms apart, if you like, with your palms upwards, putting your shoulders back. Let's all take a deep breath together. A deep, deep breath. Inhale, filling your lungs with oxygen, pressing the shoulders backwards and outwards. And exhale. Exhale any stress and strain that you may be carrying with you. Once again, a deep inhalation. Inhale deeply, 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 deeply. Hold and exhale. Try to exhale double the time as much as you inhale. Once again, deep inhalation, relaxing your facial muscles, your shoulders, down to the tips of your fingers and the tips of your toes, simply spreading all of that relaxation throughout your whole body. And now we will slowly welcome our guests who are tuning in into the Zoom room from all over the world. I see Arnold Fordham from the United States. I see Josh Harmon from New York. Sarah Barrymore from South Africa, welcome. Terence Limburg from Australia. Must be early in the morning there. Sisi De Angelo from Italy, welcome, bienvenuto. Who else do we have? Audrey from the United Kingdom, welcome. Welcome, and just begin, if you like, to type in your specific question. As I'm reading some of these names, I want you to put in the comment what question you may have, a life question, a question to do with your work, your professional life, or something to do with your connection to spirit, if you like, an existential question. All questions are welcome. All questions are fine. There's no such thing as a stupid question, only a stupid answer. And luckily for you, I don't actually answer. I ask you questions based on the topic that you put forth. And I'm beginning to see some of you typing in your questions, and this pleases me very much. Of course, those who have filled out the form for enrolling to this webinar will have priority. Drink to your health and welcome you to this webinar. I want you to think about, if you were to lodge a complaint with someone, a complaint about your life, right here and now in your life. If you have like this, why me complaint, why does this and this and this always happen? Why do I have to go through this? Here is your opportunity to write that down. If you'd like to vent a little about what's going on in your life, write it down. I can't stand it that this and this and this is going on in my life. It drives me crazy. Why? You know, this type of thing. Allow yourself to express your anger and anxiety about this particular topic. If you were standing in front of some kind of mentor or some kind of great teacher, what is the topic that you would bring forth? What is the biggest source of pain or anxiety in your life? Is it something in your relationships? Is it something to do with your professional life? Or is it something to do with income issues? Or something to do perhaps simply with an existential issue that you may be facing? Allow yourself to jot down some of the thoughts that are related to this topic. I'm giving you just a few moments, and sometimes I talk just so that I give you time to write or type into the comments. I'll give you just a little time to really focalize on what topic of your life are you going to work with today. What's the topic you want to transform from fear to freedom? We're going to be looking at this fear, this anxiety, because down deep inside, we are talking about a specific fear you have. Okay? And one way that I can help you to get more specific is to recall the last time, recently, within the last 24 hours, within the last week, or even the last month. Recall the scenario. I want you to recall the scenario where you are getting upset or anxious. Where does this scenario take place? Is it in the morning when you wake up? Is it at the office? Is it when there are some family gatherings and something comes up for you, anxiety? It could be in the supermarket. Simply recall, what is the most frustrating scenario And I really want you to revisit this scenario as if it is happening right now. Can you do that? Can you put in an effort? You may need to close your eyes, whatever works for you best. Simply recall, where were you, or where are you usually when this scenario takes place? Is it in the morning, in the evening? Are you with other people? If so, who is that specific person or people? And what is the trigger? Think about the trigger. We say a trigger is something that sets you off. What is the trigger that gets you to start thinking to yourself, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm so frustrated? When do you start having this flow of thoughts, this narrative in your mind? It's very important that you revisit the location. Are you there now? Give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up in the comments below. I want you to really revisit it and recall the trigger that sets you off, and you just get so upset or depressed. It might be something that's just depressing you. Okay, it might be watching the news that triggers off depression or anxiety. Simply revisit that place, that scene. Right, so I'm just going to give you a little time to go into that feeling. How do you feel when that's happening? Do you get a headache? Do you feel a swelling here in your throat? Like you want to cry or you want to scream, but you're holding it in? Or do you feel cramps here in your stomach, in your heart area? Simply observe yourself. How do you feel when you believe that this thought is true? In other words, how do you feel when you believe in your worst fear, or that statement that you're telling yourself? Remember, you've written down the narrative, the inner narrative, like, I'm never going to get clients, or he doesn't love me enough, he ignores me, or I'm going to leave her, I can't stand her anymore. This is the narrative. This is the fear. If you like to get specific, even more specific, really write down the fear. I am afraid that. I am afraid that. Because that's what's bothering you. It's the fear. It's not the event, it's the fear. Because remember, another person in your shoes wouldn't be afraid, but you are afraid. And it's good to acknowledge this fear, to look at that fear. So I'm just going to give you a little time to write down again. What is your deepest fear behind the frustration? Once you've located the fear, this is 50% of the work. 50% of your transformation is when you recognize the fear. It's the root of your frustration, the root of your anger, the root of your depression. It's a fear. It's always a fear. Find the fear. Think about your thinking. In other words, observe your thinking in this stressful situation. What are you thinking to yourself? What's that line that you're repeating to yourself? Think very deeply. What is that belief in that fear? What's that belief system that's keeping you in the grips of fear? What's the belief? If this doesn't happen, I will go broke. If this doesn't happen, I will go bankrupt. If this doesn't happen, or if this happens, I'm going to leave XYZ. Think about really the worst fear. If you like, type it in the comments below in the messaging board so I can read them and help you to process them even better. So, as I said, you've done 50% of the work. The real work is finding the deeper fear. Now, how do you react when you believe that fear? Again, write it down. Is it the headache? Is it a cramped feeling here on the back of your neck? Some people feel that because it's like the weight they're lifting. Is it here in your chest? Okay, look at it, both the fear and what it's doing to you. The fear and the physical symptoms. The thought, the belief system. Remember, it's 1, 2, or maximum 3 sentences. If you haven't expressed it yet in 3 sentences, it means you haven't done the work yet. Just keep focusing. What's the line, the inner narrative that you are going and repeating compulsively in your head? And what's the feeling in your body? How do you embody that dis-ease? Do you have eczema, scratchy skin, headaches? Perhaps it's become an ulcer over time if it's compulsive. If it's chronic, it may develop. So, now let's pass it through the 3 filters of the Alkistis method using the Socratic technique of questioning. So the first filter, filter number 1, has to do with ethos. Ethos, if you recall, is the Greek word for being ethical. In other words, being truthful. So with ethos, you have to ask yourself, is this thought, is this narrative true? Or am I lying to myself? I'm not asking why you're lying to yourself, but acknowledge if you are lying to yourself. As Socrates taught, most of our troubles come because we're lying to ourselves. We are not truthful with ourselves. So the first real filter is asking yourself, is this belief, is this fear true? Is it really going to happen? Am I 100% certain? Are you 100% certain that you're right? You need to prove it. You need to show evidence. Show evidence that this is true. Okay, you have to be meticulous in your way of thinking. If you say it's true, you have to prove that you're not just being dramatic. that you're not just overgeneralizing, that you're not just taking things way too personally. So ask yourself, is this thought that you have written down, this inner narrative, is it true? 1 out of 100, how true is it? I give you some moment to reflect on that. Okay? And I want to challenge you here. I want you to take that sentence, that narrative for a moment, and flip it around, flip it on its head. I call this the switch or the flip. Say the opposite. Think of the opposite of what you just thought. For example, if your fear is, he's going to leave me, I want you to think, I'm going to leave him. Just for a moment, we are merely trying on a different way of thinking. Okay, just humor me, do the exercise, and think of the opposite. Instead of saying, I'm going to go bankrupt, say to yourself, this is my opportunity to make more money than ever before. Just try that on for a different way of thinking. I didn't say that this new statement is true, but I just want you to go to the opposite extreme just to try it on for size. You know how you sometimes go into a shop and you try on some clothes? You don't know if you're going to buy them, but you just try them on. So I want you to try on this thought. Think of the opposite of what you've been thinking so far. And see what happens. What does it do with you? What happens to you when you have that thought? Just take note. Now we move to the second filter of the Alkistis method, and that is the filter of pathos. Pathos, for those of you who don't know yet or haven't read my book yet, pathos is the filter of passion, because the Greek word pathos is the origin of the word passion. So when we pass it through the filter of pathos, we are looking at everything to do with the emotional world. And you have to ask yourself, under this principle of pathos, is this thought kind? Is this thought kind? In other words, when you're doing this thought, because we do thoughts, okay, we practice thoughts. When you're practicing this thought, is it kind? Is it a kind thing to do to yourself? Probably not. It's not a kind thing. You're probably abusing yourself. You're probably sabotaging yourself. It's not a very kind thing to do. And ask yourself, is it kind towards the other person involved? In other words, are you fixating that other person? Are you putting a label on them? Are you limiting them? Are you just saying, oh, she's just a, excuse my expression, she's just a bitch, or he's a jerk? If you put labels on that, on another person, is that kind? Aren't you kind of fixating them into that role in your mind? So if it's not kind, it doesn't pass the second filter. The third filter of the Alkistis method is the test of logos. Logic is the English word that comes from the Greek word logos. Logos is our ability to reason. So under this principle, the main question to ask yourself is it useful? Is it useful to carry on having such a thought? What use is it to have this thought? What is the result you get? Remember those physical results you were getting? Headaches, feeling of choking up here and swelling here, or ulcers. Is that the result you want? So is it useful to keep having these thoughts? No, my dear friend, it's not useful at all. It's not useful to do that to yourself and to do that to the others involved. So, it's time to change the energy. It's time to make a transformation. Are you ready? Now I want you to take that original sentence, the original narrative you were telling yourself, that 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, that compulsive thought, and I want you to rewrite it, to reframe it in a way that is more truthful, more kind, and more useful to you and everyone involved. Go ahead, I give you some time to rewrite and rephrase your original narrative. Go ahead, I give you some time. Just rewrite it so that it's more truthful, more kind, and more useful. This is really where you need to help yourself, okay? And if you want, you can send it to me and I can help you to rephrase it. If you write it in the comments below, I will help you to rephrase it. I will help you. Send me your limiting belief and I will try to rephrase it with and for you. And why I say this is because you can rephrase your thoughts. You can reprogram your mind. Because think of it, all these thoughts that are going through your mind are a programming, a self-programming. You are just running the same program in your head over and over again. So we are just reprogramming our thinking. And instead of talking to ourselves in a limiting narrative, in a fear-based narrative, we offer a new narrative that is more truthful, that is more kind, that is more useful. For example, you can say, she upsets me, or he's upsetting me. Sometimes if you add the word sometimes at the end of a sentence and add the phrase, and I'm okay with that, it lessens the degree of anger and frustration. So sometimes this happens, and I'm okay with that. You know, you have to think of a phrase that's going to help you pull away from the situation. In other words, what the Stoics call the view from above. Okay? Imagine you're floating above the situation about the height of a helicopter, viewing yourself from the outside, viewing the other person from the outside, and have an understanding as if you are like a god or someone who's able to float above, and just show an understanding for these two human beings or these people. Take pity on yourself and the situation. In other words, be forgiving. I don't mean pity in a condescending way. I mean the word compassion is more adequate. It's show compassion for two human beings trying to make sense of a difficult situation. Show compassion to yourself. In other words, have a kinder thought towards yourself, a more empowering thought, the type of thought that a guardian would have. You see? So, my dear friends, I hope you have all rewritten your phrase, your new belief system. And now we're going to do a meditation. Now, why do I do a guided meditation at the end of this exercise always? The reason I do a guided meditation is to be able to help you to plant this new affirmation into your subconscious. Because it's one thing to think a thought in the conscious realm, but it's another thing to put it into your subconscious, to plant it into your subconscious. You have to understand that the subconscious is something like in the iceberg. Okay, you have an iceberg. Have you ever seen a film of an iceberg? The tip of the iceberg is the conscious thinking, but below the water surface is the bottom part of the iceberg, and it's often much bigger than the tip. It carries a much bigger weight. This is your subconscious. So we have to plant our thought into the subconscious for it to have a deep and lasting impact. So we always combine our exercise with a deep relaxation. In the state of deep relaxation, you are in alpha mode. In other words, alpha or theta, where the mind is absorbing instructions, absorbing new programs. So I invite you, if you are a patron, to join in the guided meditation. For those of you who are not patrons, you can simply go to my website and download an MP3, a sample MP3, a free MP3, and do it there. I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year if I don't see you before.